our gracious host for having us all here tonight. We can't do it without you. It's important that we get out into the community. It's important that we have opportunities to talk to a broad range of, they use the word stakeholders, but we're talking, this is the community, this is the neighborhood, we're talking parents, we're talking taxpayers, and we're talking community members. And yes, this is a school board election, and even if you don't have a child in school, this does impact you in some way. You can't avoid it. School board elections have far-reaching implications, right? So schools float bonds. If you pay taxes, you're part of that, right? If you're an employer or business owner in the area, these kids that are going to be graduating high school, conceivably these could be your employees. So what are our schools producing, and what's the product of the efforts for our schools? And what are the schools making priorities, and what are our kids bringing to the community once they graduate, if they graduate? A little bit about me. I've lived in Riverside since 2004. My wife is a third generation Riversider. Her family deeply embedded in this city. I came here and fell in love with the town. Riverside, it's the biggest small town in America, I've felt. And for a town of 330 some thousand people now, it certainly feels like a small town. It has that vibe where people know each other and people care about what's going on. And I'm lucky in that I have been immersed in what has been going on in our schools ever since I met my wife. She is a career educator. She spent 6 years in the classroom, 23 years as an elementary school principal, and the last 3 years she has been in the district office for Lake Elsinore Unified, working and managing their local control and accountability plan, also known as the LCAP. It is the controlling document that pairs the priorities of the school district with the financial piece, and it puts those two together, and it's the document by which the school communicates to the community, to the neighbors, stakeholders, families, exactly what's important and how they're going to solve problems. So I have had conversations with my wife about what's going on in education for a number of years. I started to deep dive into what I saw as something deeply concerning, going back to when Common Core state standards were coming down the pike. And when I saw that, I said, uh-oh, okay, there's something going on here that we need to take a real hard look at. And I saw it for what it was. Common Core state standards were the attempt by the state level governments to lay down a track where they could deliver whatever payload they wanted. And it was a test to see if families and parents were going to accept it. And they pushed it hard enough and they got it, okay? So once Common Core state standards was sold to the state of California, then they realized now we have an avenue to deliver whatever payloads we want. Jason has used the word indoctrination. Well, when you control the mechanisms by which you deliver learning, and you cut out the important stakeholders, i.e. the parents of the children and the students, then you can deliver almost anything you want. And I saw more and more that was what was happening in our schools. I have a daughter who is a sophomore in high school right now. I was lucky enough to have her go through the STEM program for middle school, and that was an outstanding education. It's a phenomenal model, not because of the science, technology, engineering, and math. Those are all great. What made the school and the learning phenomenal was the rigor by which they taught and the way that the teachers leaned into their engagement with the students, okay? So it's not the topics, it's the learning and the rigor. Now that means that we don't have to have STEM be a single campus solution. STEM can be spread across the school district. And that's something that I firmly believe that we're missing out as a school district, that we can do right away and really bring learning back. My 3 platforms. Number 1, parental engagement. Common Core, sorry, not Common Core, but COVID Common Core, just as bad. So COVID-19, right? We had a couple of years of COVID that was a disaster for education. I understood at the beginning, I was concerned about what was going on with COVID. We did not know, as a nation, certainly as a world, we did not know how bad it was going to be. We didn't know mortality rates, we didn't know transmissibility. So I understood why there was a lot of pulling back and a lot of fear. But there became a point where we understood that, okay, we've kind of got a handle on it, and we realized, a lot of us realized, that the damage we were doing to our kids by not having them in school was worse than any of the risks that the COVID, as I looked at it, was posing to our kids. And at that point, then you're right, all the wheels fell off, and then the parents really started to get upset, and understandably so. The other part of COVID that was interesting was the distance learning application. Okay, that was the district's desperate attempt to keep some semblance of education going. What they didn't expect was that parents would actually pay attention to what was coming across those computer screens, and were understandably, in many, many cases, shocked and aghast at what they were hearing and what these teachers were saying. Not all teachers, I'm not throwing the entire teaching profession, but there was a lot of dissemination of things that were so beyond the scope of what our kids were supposed to be in school for, that parents were just, oh my gosh, what's going on here? And started to question it more and more and more. And if you attend board meetings or you watch them on video across the country, you see it. Parents are way more active now, I think, than they have ever been in education, because there was this awakening and they saw what was going on. Unfortunately, also, I think it coincided with school districts through the school boards and supplanted by school staff to almost carve the parents out of the decision-making that was going on. So they were becoming more insular. They were separating themselves in their decision-making processes and the whys for their decisions in education and curriculum from the parents, right at the time when they should have been leaning in and looping the parents in more. Big, big problem. So my first priority is to make sure that RUSD gets back to a place where the parents become the primary connection between the school and the student, right? The parents are the ones who decide and deliver the morals. The parents are the ones that decide what's best for the child. You can have the best teacher in the world, they're not going to be the kid's parents. We are the parents. Number 1, first and foremost. Okay. Second priority, my background is in finance, and I have spent a lot of my time, I would say even more so than my wife, I spent a lot of time digging into the numbers. So I have a propensity to look at the way, not only the raw numbers themselves, but how the presenter lays the numbers out. So there's a lot that is said when you have a fiscal person create a presentation that is financially related. So there's things that is said, and there's a lot that is not said in financial statements and in presentations. So I have been watching that occur and digging into what is being said out there. And boy, there are billions and billions of dollars that are floating around this nation, tens and tens of millions of dollars just within our own district that are going into programs and curriculum and solutions and support mechanisms that I question. And when we start as parents to lean into that a little bit and start asking questions, When we get pushback from the district, that should be warning number one. We talk a lot about systems of support. You'll hear that a lot at the district. Okay, it's great that we're emotionally supporting our kids, but there's different levels of that. So tier 1 instruction is what we deliver every day. That's the academic education, the math, the English language arts, the sciences, all of that. Tier 1, okay? That has their own level of support. And then what they have is called tier 2, where students might need a little bit more help, a little bit more accommodation. And then tier 3 is the one where it's the most intensive, where you have a lot of extra supports. You might have one-on-one additional instruction. You might have things like at-home interventions, one-on-one, small group type training. And along with that goes a lot of what's called professional development. You see this a lot on budgets. Professional development is a term that is now become sort of the catch-all for spending big monies within the school district. Professional development is the monies that they are saying that are going to improve the delivery and improve the teaching. Well, okay, but how are you measuring that? How is that going to actually apply in the classroom? And as parents, how are we going to see that? How are we going to be able to measure that? They don't answer that. They don't answer that question. Let me put some numbers to that. I talked about tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 1 instruction, for every dollar that we spend on tier 1 instruction in Riverside Unified School District, right now we are spending anywhere from $14 to $15 on tier 2 and tier 3 instructional supports. So there's the adage, if you show me an organization's budget, I will show you an organization's priorities. So they're spending a lot of money on all of these professional development programs and third-party vendors, and you look a little bit deeper and you find out that there are things like bias training, unconscious bias training, multi-tiered systems of support, but they don't have any measurement. How do we know it's even working, right? So I look at this and go, we need to do better. We've got to have a better idea of when we spend money, every dollar that we spend needs to have an outcome positive for the child. As a board trustee, I will promise you that when I am asked to approve a spending item and staff cannot answer the question, you tell me how that's going to benefit the child, then that's going to be a no for me until you guys can come back and tell me how that's going to work and how that's going to translate into improved test scores. We had test scores, preliminary CAA, SPP scores, which are state level tests in English language arts and math, were released at the school board meeting on Thursday, and they were atrocious. They were bad going into COVID, and we knew they were going to get bad because of COVID. They were down 5 or 6% across the board. But when you have math proficiency at 30% across the school, and English language arts proficiency at around 45%, we are failing. As a district, we are failing our kids. And that presentation did not have any pathway to say what we were going to do different. So they show numbers from 18-19, they show the numbers from 21-22, oh, they're bad, they're poor, and then they say, well, we've got all these programs, and that's, any questions from the audience? We've got a lot of questions. How are you guys going to make it different? No one's asking that question. As a board member, I can promise you that there will be a lot of questions from my seat on what are you doing as a district? What are you doing, district staff, that you're doing at the school site to make things better? How are we improving? What's changing in our delivery of our instruction? So are the school site leadership actually taking the teachers and making them better? Helping them out in the classrooms? Where are we missing it out? They're not answering that yet. So that's my second platform. Third, we just this learning gap that we have, it goes back to the spending aspect. There are a lot of things that we can do that don't have anything to do with spending millions of dollars, that we can implement now rather than put in 4 brand new schools. Let's fix what we've got. Let's invest in the students in the classroom today rather than drop $50 million on a brand new school simply because that particular area of the city has been vacant of a school. I understand there are certain needs, and we have to meet them, but we can be smarter with it, and I certainly think that our board, as we see it now, definitely needs a change. And I will promise you that I will be available for parents, and we will make this board something that is representative of the community and will reflect community values, and get this district back on the track that it used to be. Our RUSD has a tremendous history. It has a tremendous legacy, and we need to bring that back. So again, thank you all for being here. Any questions you have, feel free to ask.